Hello, my name's Julian Edgar and I'm the author of these 4 books. What I want to cover in today's video is which book should you buy depending on what you're interested in. People often ask me that question, so let's have a look. The first book I want to cover is this one, Vehicle Ride and Handling, Testing, Modification and Development. It's a big book, 360 pages, as you can see, a large format book, full colour and full coverage of suspension from fundamental understandings right through to modification and development. So unlike pretty well any other book that I know of on car suspension, you can start this book with basically no understanding of the topic whatsoever. It starts at the very beginning. What are springs? What are dampers? Shock absorbers? What functions do they perform? What are the different linkage systems, from torsion beam to independent front suspension to wishbones to McPherson struts? It covers everything. And then it actually moves on to modification and development. So I would suggest it is the single book you need if you are modifying or developing suspension, whether you are an advanced person in that regard or whether you are a beginner. The book's about $86 US, but as you saw, it's quite a big book, and that helps explain why it's not a cheap book. The next book I want to cover is Vehicle Aerodynamics. Where is it? Here it is. Vehicle Aerodynamics, Testing, Modification and Development. It's the same size book. It's a big book. It's full colour. There's a lot in it, and it covers a full coverage of aerodynamics. My books are sliding off my desk. Let me just stick it over there. A full coverage of aerodynamics, again, from the fundamental understandings through to modification and development. I think this is a really important book because it's really the only book available for the amateur that gives you enough detail that you can understand car aerodynamics and then apply those ideas. And a really, really important part of this book is testing. So many people modify the aerodynamics of their car, whether it's their race car or their road car, simply by guesswork, by rules of thumb, by copying what others have done. But this book takes a completely different approach because it is predicated on testing. Now, when you think of aerodynamic testing, a lot of people think of racing around a track, at full speed, seeing if the understeer or the oversteer is different. This book isn't taking that approach. It is measuring pressures, it is measuring flows, it is measuring changes of drag, it is measuring changes in downforce and lift, and all of those measurements can be done by normal people without a wind tunnel, using relatively cheap equipment, and testing also at relatively slow speeds on the track, or as I do, on the road. So a very, very different book to anything that is available anywhere else, because it covers measurement as well as just those rules of thumb. It's got a few rules of thumb, but it's primarily based around what you can do measuring and therefore knowing what you're actually trying to achieve. It is the single book you need if you are interested in learning about vehicle aerodynamics or if you are interested in modification or development. Its current US dollars price is $65. Amazon do change their pricing occasionally, but that's what it is at the time of doing this video. The next book that I want to cover is a history book, Car Suspension. It's the same size as those other ones in terms of format. It's also full colour, and this one's 240 pages long. Now, it's interesting, when I was a kid, I used to think, in fact, I used to say in my ignorance, who cares about history? I'm not interested in history. That's what's past. I'm interested in the future, which shows how dumb I was, because history provides you with a context and an understanding. Why are suspension systems like they are today? It's because of their development over that period from 1880 to 2016 are the two extremes that I cover in that book. Now, it provides understanding, it provides context, and here's something else it provides. If you are developing a suspension system from scratch, it also gives you lots of choices to look at. For example, if you're developing suspension for an ultra lightweight vehicle or a solar race car or anything that's slightly unusual, copying current automotive practice is a really bad idea For example, 5-link suspension, as used on the rear of many current cars, is incredibly complex, it's relatively expensive, it's relatively heavy. That's not the approach that you would take if you were developing an ultra lightweight vehicle. And this book shows you so many of those other systems, explains the advantages, explains the disadvantages. So you're just not locked in to what currently is being done in the automotive field. Car suspension, over 120 years of ride and handling. Current price at the time of doing this video, $55 US. The final book I want to cover today is A Century of Car Aerodynamics, a sister title to the history of car suspension. Again, full colour, lots of pages, lots and lots of content. It covers car aerodynamics from its beginning, which is around 1920 with the Tropfenwagen, through to about 2019. And again, it gives you that understanding in the context. And it's especially important if you hear people saying, oh, why don't we make cars like they did in the 30s? They had such slippery cars back then and now they're all just, done for styling. That's completely wrong. They did have slippery cars in the 20s and 30s, but they also had some huge downsides, like a large amount of aerodynamic lift. But again, it shows you how those shapes have developed, to not only give low drag, but also low aerodynamic lift for better stability. So again, that understanding and that context, which you see a lot of people simply don't have. It shows where things have come from and why they have come in the direction that they have come. I think it's just a fascinating topic to explore. And the same with the automotive suspension history. Fascinating topic to look at. I had great fun writing the book, those 2 books, because you learn so much that just isn't common knowledge. They're the only 2 books on the history of suspension, the history of automotive aerodynamics. Currently just over $50 US on Amazon. So they're the 4 books. Vehicle Ride and Handling, Testing, Modification and Development. Absolutely the book to have if you are modifying suspension, developing different suspension, or want to learn about how suspension works. Vehicle Aerodynamics, Testing, Modification and Development. Again, the single book you need. And that also includes, very importantly, a whole bunch of aerodynamic test techniques that allow you to develop modifications, under trays, diffusers, splitters, spoilers, wings that actually work, as opposed to being based solely on guesswork. And then my 2 history of technology books, Car Suspension, over 120 years of ride and handling, and A Century of Car Aerodynamics, the science and art of cars and airflow. All 4 books are available now from Amazon. Thank you.